Have you ever wondered what it takes to tame a wild heart? To transform arrogance into compassion and greed into generosity? This is the story of how one man's quiet strength changed not just a ranch, but an entire industry. The sun set slowly over the wide valleys of Wyoming, painting the Ember Ridge Ranch in streaks of crimson and gold. The ranch stretched for nearly 50,000 acres, a kingdom of dust and grass where cattle roamed and horses galloped against the wind. Its master, Alexander Thornfield, carried himself like a king, arrogant, wealthy, and feared. To his workers, he was both legend and tyrant, a man who valued pedigree more than people, profit more than kindness. Among his employees was a quiet horseman named Jonah Callahan. Jonah had worked with animals since he was a boy, and though he lacked money, his gift with horses was undeniable. He had an instinct that seemed almost mystical, able to calm a wild stallion with a whisper, and able to notice illness long before others saw it. Still, Alexander treated him as nothing more than another hired hand. Their fates collided one spring evening when tragedy threatened Thornfield's prized mare Celesta. She was a rare Andalusian, pregnant with a foal that Alexander believed would secure his ranch's legacy. But complications arose. Celesta grew weak, her breathing ragged, her life and the foal's hanging in balance. Panic swept through the stables. The ranch vet muttered grim predictions, shaking his head. Alexander raged, cursing incompetence, unwilling to lose what he considered his fortune, walking on four legs. In desperation, he turned to Jonah, who had been quietly watching from the shadows. "You think you're special with these animals, don't you?" Alexander sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Fine, let's make this interesting. Save Celestia and her foal, and I'll hand you the ranch. Fail, and you'll never work with animals again. Not here, not anywhere in this state. I'll see to it myself." Gasps rippled through the stable. Jonah froze, heart pounding. The wager was outrageous, 50,000 acres against his entire life's work. But Jonah saw the mare's trembling flanks, her eyes wide with terror. He could not walk away. He accepted not for land, but for the life of mother and child. The night was long and brutal. Jonah worked with relentless focus, mixing herbs, steadying Celestia's breathing, guiding her through the agonizing hours of labor. Sweat poured down his brow as he whispered softly into her ear, his hands never leaving her trembling body. Workers watched in silence, Alexander pacing like a restless predator. At dawn, the miracle came. Celestia's cries filled the barn, followed by the weak but steady whinny of a newborn foal. Both mother and child lived. Exhausted, Jonah collapsed into the hay, tears streaking his dirt-stained face. The stable erupted in cheers. Even the hardest cowboys wiped their eyes. Alexander stood stunned. He had lost his bet. By law of his own pride, the ranch now belonged to Jonah. But when the moment of truth arrived, Jonah shook his head. "I don't want your land," he said firmly. "What I want is for you to change. Treat these animals the way they deserve. Implement real welfare practices, proper care, no cutting corners for profit. Promise me that, and I'll walk away." For the first time in his life, Alexander Thornfield was speechless. Something in Jonah's voice, calm, resolute, unyielding, struck deeper than any threat. After a long pause, he nodded. Jonah left Ember Ridge soon after, taking a humble position at a horse rescue center across the valley. Months passed. Celesta thrived, her foal bounding across the pastures. Quietly, Alexander began implementing the very protocols Jonah demanded. Better feed, safer shelters, regular veterinary care, humane handling of livestock. At first, the changes felt foreign, even foolish. But soon, the results spoke for themselves. Mortality dropped. Productivity rose. Workers found pride instead of fear in their labor. 6 months later, Alexander rode out to the rescue center, where Jonah was tending to a scarred Mustang. "I need you," Alexander admitted, his pride tempered. "Not as a hand, but as my partner. Come back, and I'll make you director of animal welfare. I can't do this without you." Jonah studied him carefully, then agreed. Not for wealth or glory, but for the chance to make a difference on a grand scale. Years rolled forward like river water. Ember Ridge transformed. What was once a place of arrogance became a sanctuary of innovation. Alexander invested heavily in welfare programs, opening clinics and training centers. Jonah traveled across the country, sharing knowledge, lecturing, writing, becoming a national authority in animal ethics. Together, they shattered old traditions, proving that profit and compassion could ride in the same saddle. By the 5th year, Ember Ridge stood as a shining example in the ranching world. Tourists visited not only for its beauty, but to witness humane practices in action. Universities sent students to study its model. Other ranchers, once dismissive, now came seeking advice. Alexander Thornfield, once a tyrant, became an outspoken advocate for reform. His name tied forever to the legacy Jonah had demanded. As for Jonah, he remained humble, never forgetting the night when one mare and her foal changed everything. He often walked among the herds at dawn, whispering to them as he always had, his bond unbroken. Workers spoke of him with reverence, not just as a leader, but as a man whose quiet strength had tamed even the pride of Alexander Thornfield. And so, from a reckless bet born of arrogance, a revolution was sparked. One life saved became 1,000. One act of compassion reshaped an entire industry. The story of Jonah Callahan and Ember Ridge Ranch spread far beyond the valleys of Wyoming, a reminder that true greatness lies not in what we own, but in how we care for those entrusted to us.